All right, so we're going to start talking about our phase three here, our last acceleration into the ball part. This is where we're actually swinging forward, all kind of forward energy into the ball and producing the actual hit. So there's a lot of different components here. There's getting far enough back into our load that it's springing us forward. There's that hip shoulder separation, that spring forward. There's a lot of relaxation to allow us to spring forward. So we're going from this relaxation loading phase to this very aggressive forward phase that really is a translation of the energy that we've built up through the floor, through our legs, through our hips, and then comes through the shoulder forward. So you want to get into this phase, and this involves hand contact, elbow being high, body torso being easy and loose, not kicking your legs out, contacting through the ball and not just stopping your hands. So these are all things that kind of involve this last phase. So we're going to go over. I'm going to show you a clip here, and then we'll go over what we've kind of been talking about. So first it's the approach phase, then the drive phase, loading, and then acceleration phase. So we can see all aspects here, of course. First one being the drive phase with the left foot waiting in here. The takeoff here, right, left, is when we're unfolding, our arms are loose, we're relaxed. Here is when phase two starts, right here when the arms are about shoulder, about waist height. This is when we've already put enough ground force in and we're starting to propel ourselves upward, and this is this upward loading phase that we've translated the ground force energy into our legs and then through our hips and now into our jump, and we're still translating it back. So here you can see a real nice pull load, a real nice, really close to the body too. He's got a really good hip shoulder separation here, this hip here, and then these hips are facing forward and it's opening up. And then you can see the arm rotating on this kind of 90-degree axis right here. How we talked about before, so the arm is working pretty well. It's not pinching that shoulder capsule at all. It's really kind of opening and flexing up that shoulder capsule. So about here is where our loading phase ends. So this is our biggest loading phase here. This is where we've kind of reached peak tension pull. So like example with a bow and arrow, the body is the entire bow, and you've pulled the string back as far as it's going to go to release that arrow. This is at the point where you've pulled that arm back and that bow is at its most tense. So all you have to do now really is let it fly. So we've really gotten in this thing. Now this is where the acceleration phase begins here. And we always want to have a nice 90-degree angle here with the arm. So the hand slides back behind the head. So this loading phase, we need some relaxation again in the arm so that this arm can slide back behind the head. You're going to notice that, again, all players have a pretty similar acceleration phase that are good hitters. They're hitting the ball over their hitting shoulder, their elbow is leading, their forearm never comes lower than their eyes, and their contact is always a good hand contact. It's not with their forearm, it's not with the top of their fingers, it's a good palm, just like a high five, and then the fingertips on top are to really propel it. But this is where it basically begins here. So the acceleration phase is really getting that arm, this is still loading up, and now we've gotten to our maximum load 90-degree recoil here. So again, this 90 degree is really indicative of of top athletes and how loose you have to really be and how relaxed your shoulder has to be. If you're really tense, there's no way you're going to have any kind of elasticity in that arm, and you're not going to be able to produce much energy. So again, now the hand flips again to another straight ahead, and you're going to see from the other angle it does 90 degrees from the other angle. So it's interesting, these 90-degree angles that are formed. But a real nice kind of shoulder lean a little bit, so that way the right arm is elevated as a hitting shoulder. And you can see that this contact ball is right over the hitting on the right shoulder. It's not on top of the head. It's not on the side over here. It's always on their strong point. That way their lat and their deltoid and their pec, all these muscles can be engaged and really stabilize the arm joint. So when we go through and actually contact, the elbow follows, or elbow starts going through the shoulder. The deltoid starts accelerating like a rubber band effect forward, and then the elbow just naturally folds and then elasticates. So we're really accelerating through and getting our hand on top of the ball, of course. But when we hit the ball, we really want to make sure that our hand contact is an open hand, but not a really flexed, super hard open hand until contact. So that hand is relaxed, and then on contact, it's stiff for a good, split second when we're making contact, and then it's whipping through again. So you'll see a lot of players, they're wearing tape on their hands. So you can see Leal here, who's originally from Cuba on the national team, and he plays for Brazil now. He plays for Cittadinova in Italy, one of the best club teams. He's one of the best outside hitters, but he also hits the ball one of the hardest. And a lot of men wear tape on their fingers, and some women do too. And it's mostly not for blocking, it's mostly for hitting. They cap over the fingertips. And it's so that when you flex your hand, if you do flex your hand strong, the hand still is like a paddle almost. It doesn't cave in. So when you do flex your hand, it remains, those fingertips remain strong and tall, and they can get over the ball. You're also adding a little bit more weight so that you can feel your hand kind of in midair. You're kind of in more control of that hand. And then you can kind of, also it doesn't break your, not break, but split your fingertips a little bit. Sometimes that happens to me too, where my fingertips kind of bleed a little bit, just from the nail kind of getting hit pretty hard. But it's also really a training method to kind of know where your hand is in the air. You kind of feel it, so you don't have to really, you can kind of, through your approach and everything, you kind of know where your hand is. So I like taping my fingers. A lot of players won't play without it. Like Leal here, he used to not play with it so much when he was young in Cuba, but literally for the last, 8 years of video you find, you'll never see him not with tape on his fingers. Like literally never. On just these 4 fingers, this hitting fingers. Now, a lot of Russian players will do their whole hands, and you notice it's always the right hand. Some players like it, some players don't. That's a whole other subject, but it is really mainly for a good hand contact. It's not necessarily for blocking to protect our hands. It's to make sure that you're having a good hand contact. So we want to really get the meat of our hand and not hit the tape so much. The tape is on top of the ball to direct the ball, to put a little bit more strength in the fingertips and the finger joints so that we can contact and move that ball around if we want to a little bit. And again, it kind of ends a little bit of weight. So it's kind of like that end of the bullwhip where we talked about. The end of a bullwhip is not light. It has a little bit of a weight on it. So that way it can slingshot and kind of add that momentum at the end. So it's kind of an anchor at the end too. So that's another reason why players put tape on their fingers. Now when we're going here, we're accelerating through here. We want to feel a lot of tension in our lats. So our lats here are these big, strong muscles on our back that are underneath kind of our armpit here. So these big, strong muscles that connect, and they connect up into our our tricep here, and then they kept connecting to our traps here too. Our traps are these big muscles right here. So we want to really feel this a lot, this vibration when we make contact. We want to feel this almost in our armpit. A lot of times players under rotate and they feel it on the top of their shoulder. And the top of the shoulder joint, like we had talked about, can get really inflamed very easily. So we had talked about how there's not much room in the upper bicep tendon that connects into the labrum, and how those ligaments can get really inflamed quickly. And most shoulder pain that players do get, not saying all, but most shoulder pain they do get is starts off as bicep tendonitis that anchors into the labrum, and then over time that can get really inflamed, and then over time it gets weak and it kind of rips out the labrum. So a labrum is a very common volleyball injury. So what we're really trying to do here is the best hitters in the world, they don't really have that many shoulder problems and they can play for years and years and years, is because when they make contact, they're really getting their armpit over the ball. And when I say armpit, the armpit's really made of two muscles. The armpit's made of the lat muscle, which is here, and then the pectoralis major, like just your chest muscle, your big chest, your pec muscle. So we're going to go through and show a couple more plays from different angles and show you what I'm talking about here. So we have a side view of Hawk here. She's the 20-year-old from Sweden, and she has a really nice, really fast acceleration phase. So it looks like she's kind of loading up. You're going to notice the loading phases look kind of really kind of lazy and relaxed almost, and then all of a sudden it's this violent output. So you can see kind of a relax, and then all of a sudden a slingshot motion. So again, acceleration phase with the left foot pushing off. This is where we're creating our energy. We're up, we're loading right here. We're still loading. Here we've loaded. This is our last of our loading phase here. So again, from the side view, we can really see this. These 90-degree angles are important. So it's really good symmetry, and it's really letting the arm joint work well here. So it's a 90-degree angle, and then you can see here another 90-degree angle from the back view. And then you can see that when the elbow does accelerate, it's this perfect 90-degree angle again here. So it's all made up of these three 90-degree angles that allow the arm joint to kind of move freely without being pinched or hinged. And they really allow for this to transfer motion and energy quickly. So again, this is from the side view. This is a perfect view, which you're going to see almost every player do. And then you're going to notice contact out in front, driving the ball at a nice angle in front. So there's a lot to this though, so we're going to go step by step. So here's the end of the loading cycle. Here's the start of the acceleration cycle. So this is where the two transition. This is where everyone becomes the same. So acceleration, everyone does this above, accelerates out in front, and contact. So you're going to notice a couple things here. One, that the contact is always out in front, and they're contacting it through. They're never hitting it above their head or behind their head. So that's number one. That's going to save the arm shoulder. That's going to allow you to see your vision of your hitter and the ball, because you're seeing the ball and the block, everything in your peripheral at once. And it's also allowing that shoulder not to get pinched going vertical, because when you're hitting out in front, you're using these two arms. Now the third thing is the offhand here now. In this phase, you can see how it goes from the loading is this nice left arm kind of javelin maneuver here, but you're going to see how the arm gets pulled down and then forward. So she does a really good job with her offhand here. The offhand is not finished once it's hit. This is something that's really good to practice and useful when you are on the ground hitting against a wall, to kind of start first, because a lot of players don't even realize what their left hand is doing even on their approach, on their jump, all phases. So you have to be kind of aware of what your left hand is doing, because it's a giant weight that can pull you in different directions that you don't want to. Same thing with your head. Your head wants to be subtle and relaxed, and your head shouldn't have a lot of movement, because your head is a large object that kind of can pull you to the left or pull you to the right, and you don't want that dragging you in different directions where your energy is being diverted instead of forward into the ball. So the best players have a calm head, and the best players have their left or their off hitting arm in a very dynamic but coordinated vertical forward energy. So you're pushing energy forward. So we're going to see how we go up. Our hand now is swimming. And some people say pull down, try to pull down your arm, but I say go into your arm. So a lot of players say pull down on your arm, or some coaches. And a lot of pitching, this is a huge factor for pitching. This is a major factor for pitching and football quarterbacks. If you had noticed in the Tom House segment earlier, they talk about the offhand and how quarterbacks eat the apple, or they eat their hand. And pitchers are taught to tuck the glove or go into the glove. So keep that glove going forward and then drive into your glove. Don't move it really, but push your energy forward into that glove. So if the glove is on the far left, then you're going to tilt to the left, which you don't want. And if the glove is forward, then you're going to go forward with that extra energy forward. So same thing when we're hitting here. So it's just like we said, most rotational athletes are almost exactly the same. Just the timing is a little different between each sport, because volleyball we have to jump obviously, but all rotational athletes have similar kinetics sequencing. So we need to get up our left hand. Our left hand naturally comes down, and then by our waist. Sometimes it's by our waist. Volleyball players are more by their waist just because we're jumping and we're reaching high. Baseball players and quarterbacks are more towards their chest and their face a little bit, because they're kind of standing on the ground and they're reaching down. But volleyball, as you can see, we're going up here high. Same thing with tennis. Tennis players kind of have their arm somewhere by their waist here, because they're maximizing their body. Their chest cavity is really raised up and stretched out. So volleyball, we're really raising our chest cavity. We're stretching out our abs. We're stretching out our chest. Our diaphragm and our lungs are really expanded. And then when we do accelerate, we're closing that lungs, we're closing that chest kind of, and we're creating that forward energy. So we want to go into that arm. You see how this left arm here? We're going into that arm. The arm doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't come back into us. We're going forward into that arm. So taking it step by step right now. Approach, load. Loading cycle begins here. So let's go right here. Step 1, acceleration phase. Left step. This is including your big drive step and your double arm lift. This is all really key parts of your drive phase. The arms produce a lot of downward force right here. This is great. This is all part of that drive phase. Here now we start to load up. Our legs are planted. We've already got enough energy in the ground. We're about to take off. And this is when we start to load up. This is when our arms are generating a lot of force. This is when we're starting to load our arm motion and translate our force into our back, into the bow. So our loading phase begins. We've taken off. There's no such thing as hang time. We've already gone over this. So now we've already jumped. We're not worrying about our jump. Now we're manipulating our torso. So we're loading up. Really nice curve here. You can see her number, which is important, because she's not just bending her back backwards. She's twisting her side. She's torquing, which we want torque. And her head, you can see, is relaxed and even. So here, this is where our loading phase we want to get into. Our acceleration phase begins. Perfect 90-degree arm here. This is what we really want to see before we lead with the elbow. It's whether you whether you teach saying lead with the elbow or not, because there's a lot of coaches that say lead with the elbow or strike with the hand. There's lots of different ways of saying this. Whether you teach leading with the elbow or not, the fact of the matter is the elbow is leading. The elbow leads with a 90-degree angle. So whether you're saying that verbiage or not, this is the facts that the elbow does lead. Now, how you translate that into your athlete and how you get them to do this is the key of the art of coaching here, and the communication that you have and the verbiage that you use and the keywords and the phrases that you want to say and gets your athlete to do this. That's what works for them. But the actual fact of the matter is just scientifically, and you can see here clearly the elbow is high and leading the hand, right? So I don't really put too much force into the tricep. We're still pretty relaxed at this motion until contact. This is when our whole body basically stiffens up for a quick second. This is where that jolt and that really strength gets sent into the ball. So we've translated everything, and then we've kind of stiffened up, and you can see before and after pictures of players. When they're loading up, you can see their muscles, and they're kind of relaxed and they're a little tense. But then when you see on contact, you see their whole body like basically stiff as can possibly be. You can see even their quads muscles are really ripped and tense and flexed out, and their hand is flexed out. You can see this all happening, and it's a split second. It's literally just when you contact the ball. So we're relaxed, we're easygoing, we're still smooth through the air, and then bam, we're really stiff and tight, and we're staying tall though. You see how her back stays tall before contact. So once she contacts it, her back is straight. We have this loading here, then we have this straight, and then we have the forward C here. So we're contacting through the ball, and then we're loose again through the play. We're going to take a look at Gabby really quick here. We're really emphasizing right now for the first part here. We're really emphasizing this 90 degrees theory here of 3 90s, of these 3-part 90s before. So I want to get into obviously the hand behind the head is where we start to go really forward, the 3 90s, and then we're going to get into that left hand a little bit more, and also kind of turning off that lower body, because a lot of players kick or they do little different things that don't really help. They actually translate energy into different parts of the body that we don't want. We want all that energy to flow through the arm at one point. And then we're talking about hand contact, and then we're talking about follow through, which follow through is an interesting subject because a lot of players, there's some key points to say to younger players, but follow through is really a process of this whole thing where your arm is flying through the ball. So right now, we're going to go over a couple examples of the 90s. So we're going to kind of look at all these different players and really see how everyone is at this level is very similar. So even if you have this long load here, just like Gabby has this long downward load, she still comes up. Now on the left side a little bit, if you're going to go 4-4, the hand doesn't get behind the head so much. You're going to notice, I'll show you some examples on the left side. On the right side, in the middle, your hand basically always gets behind your head and you're serving. But on the left side, you can see the hand doesn't have time on these quick set to get all the way behind. So she doesn't do this true 90. She gets on top, but you can see this nice curve and the ball's outside of her body. She's really hitting outside of her body here. But you can see it's outside. This is such a great wrist away shot. These are shots. There's power shots, and there is dynamic shots, and then there is wrist away shots. There's lots of different types. This is a really controlled wrist away shot here. This is not necessarily for power. This is a really good drive to a certain spot. So you can see on the left side, the hand doesn't get always behind that much. We're going to show you some more. But that's kind of a little bit of an example of what you have to do. So here, so even on the serve here, you're going to see Jordan Thompson here. The serve is kind of a little bit, your hand obviously has a different motion because you are float serving it, but on an attack, you want that hand, that wrist to be loose. But you can see here, again, 90 degrees, very nice. The hand drives behind the head. This is just a jump float even. And then we get this rotational where we're evened out and we make this long line again. If you see it from the other angle, it looks 90 degrees because this hand is here. And then we contact out in front. And again, she's float serving it, so she's stiffening her hand and making a paddle. And you can see the left hand tucked in for a split second there, and then she doesn't follow. That's a float serve technique with the wrist away, with the follow through. So here we go, Robinson on the outside. She's a very good loose approach here. So she's really smooth. Here's the loading phase, loading phase, loading phase. Right here, now we're starting to accelerate, right? So we got this nice 90-degree load. And now we're starting our acceleration. And you can see again right here, this is what the side view looks like with the hand and wrist. So this would be the side view of that 90 degrees. Let's go back on Thompson. This is what it looks like right there. So this right here on the arm is the back angle, what it looks like here. That's the back angle view. And here right there is the side angle view. This is the same thing. This is just from the side. So you can see how this is 90 degrees here. So the arm, the elbow's leading here. You're getting a lot of energy going forward with the body. So that's just the side view. Thompson was the top view, behind view. So now our elbow, again, elbow's leading. And it's relaxed. We're letting this elbow joint flick down on top of the ball. And we're stiff only there for a quick second. Now our whole body is tense, and we're really getting this feeling in this upper arm, in this back, this delt. Everything is stabilizing here. So we don't want a whole lot of pressure on that top deltoid, the anterior deltoid, that's the top deltoid. We don't want that bicep tendon to be inflamed. We, one of the best hitters, really get this nice under their arm kind of attack here. So again, that's the side view. You get a good little front view and side view. Here we go, Zaitsev. He's a much stronger guy. He's a little bit more stiff as a player. He's got a little bit more strength than even most guys. But we can still see the relaxation, the acceleration phase. Loading phase begins here. He's here now. This is the peak loading. Now we're starting to accelerate forward. That hand is starting to go forward. And still the hand's behind the head. So we can still see a pretty 90 degrees, even though he's pretty strong and he's a little bit tighter than most players. We can still see how that hand gets behind the head. And then the elbow leads, again, another 90 degree angle here. And again, that's when we're stiff right here. So he's really contacting it out in front. You can see his everything's locked up Everything's very strong at this moment. All that energy is getting dispersed in this bottom and then top here, and then in this back of the arm. Really a lot of energy is getting translated and stabilizing. So we're making a huge vibration in our arm on contact, right? Our arm vibrates because it's making contact. It's getting basically jiggled, to not say a better word, but it's jiggling, and it's getting a big vibration sent through it. So that vibration we want to be stable. That's why we strength train. That's why we tighten up that arm capsule. That's why we do all these band exercises. That's why we do all these things so our body can absorb this shock wave. How about that? That's a good word, shock wave. The shock wave of our hand hitting the ball going through our body, so we can absorb that better. And again, we follow through, and we're putting that power through the ball. So I want to talk a little bit now about keeping our legs. Let's talk about keeping our legs quiet. Okay, so let's talk about our legs over a little bit here now. Since we've kind of gone over what the acceleration phase should look like with the 3 90-degree angles, when we're making contact, we really want to tighten up the abs and let out our breath should kind of be relaxed and related to our hit. So we should be kind of taking in breath, and our abs and our body is really opening up. You can see all this ab and stretching motion. So we're taking in kind of a breath, and then when we explode here, we're contracting, and then you tighten up those abs, and you're making contact, and it's shortening your abs and shortening your muscle cycle. So you're tightening up, you're contracting, you're letting out a breath. That's why a lot of players grunt. You can see a lot of players, tennis players, grunt like this. I had a player on my UCLA team, this guy named David Russell. He was one of our middles. He's a really, really nice guy. So he's super nice guy, really smart, like genius level, scientist level smart guy. Really, really a good person, and a really friendly. You'd never think anything of him. When he attacks, he makes the loudest grunting, like it's like a scary yell kind of sign. And he's a very quiet guy too, very soft spoken, and he really can't help it because he's translating his breath into his attack, which he's a very strong attacker. He was actually one of our middles when we won the national championship in 2006. So he is the shorter middle. He's only about 6'5", had a 40-inch vertical, really good mechanics, and very strong player. So, but not necessarily super physically looking strong, but he had timed his breath very well. And so he would let out a really loud grunt every time he would hit, and he couldn't really help it. And it's interesting coming from such a soft-spoken person that this would happen a lot. But he's relaxed, and he's grunting through the ball, and now the abs are tight. The shock wave is being absorbed and not rattling that shoulder joint too much and irritating it too much. So that way the lat and the pec are really absorbing the input here. So I want to talk about the legs, because a lot of the times players will kick, or they'll shoot out their legs, or they'll do something. We want very quiet leg forward motion. Our legs are almost shut off here because we've translated now this back bow energy, and now we're accelerating it. It's traveling up through our spine into the arm going forward. We want to be lower half. We want to turn off the lower half. So a lot of players like kick out their legs or do something, and that deters energy away from our shoulder going into the ball. The best hitters don't kick their legs out. They don't. When they're making contact, it's a smooth bow. All these players are really good at this, so you can't really tell super a lot about this. But the legs are very important to relax them and let them go forward and flex forward naturally, as you can see here. So there's no motion in those legs. It's a natural kick forward where it's relaxed. And then you're kind of turning, and you want them to be in a good alignment so that you can land properly. And you can bend properly on your landing to take, again, that shock wave of the ground to absorb that input. But we're still talking about hitting right here. And we're going up and we're accelerating through the ball, leading with our elbow, our chest, everything is still relaxed until contact. That's when we tighten up, and our hands, now all our focus is on really turning that energy into our arms, into our body here, and cutting off the lower body, really relaxing the lower body. That way the trunk can really rotate. If you're really tight in your legs and you're kicking, you can't really rotate the hip shoulder separation. That process gets locked, and your legs are locked, everything's too tight. So on contact, everything stiffens up a little bit, but then after contact again, the body relaxes completely, as you can see here, and then the recoil happens where you can see everything is pretty loose right here. He's gone back to being very loose and relaxed. You can even see the right arm following through to the right here. Look how relaxed this arm is. So you can see it's loading up, it's relaxed, it's tense, it's really tense, it hits through, and now it's relaxed again. You can see how loose. You can see his wrist right here flip, just because there's no effort in it at all. You can see that wrist right here. See this? That's only a process of being loose again. And Zaitsev, interesting. This is Ivan Zaitsev, one of the hardest hitters in volleyball history. He's interesting too because he tapes his fingers every single time the same too. You'll never see him not tape his fingers this way. Let's see if we can get a better picture here. So he hits his right hand. He really makes a paddle with his hand. So you can see it kind of there. You can see it here. He doesn't tape the fingertips. He tapes all the joints, like each knuckle, and he just completely blocks them off, and he uses a ton of tape. And he does this every single time. You will never, ever see Ivan Zaitsev. If you Google him right now and you watch, because there's tons and tons of videos of him playing and hitting, you will never, ever, ever see him without the tape. Now that works for him, and that's like kind of his style, and he kind of has this paddle kind of hand thing, and then that way he can relax. Not saying you need it. Saying if you're having trouble contacting the ball and you're mishitting it a lot, then maybe it's something to look at with tape as a training device. You can kind of implement it different ways. Each player kind of has their own little unique thing too. It's probably, I think it's like part ritual, also part kind of routine, part their personality. I know it sounds whatever, but it's an important thing for a lot of players. Don't get me wrong here. So, but again, you'll never not see him wearing it. Every single time, the thousands and thousands and thousands of clips you see him hitting throughout every single year, he is all four fingers taped, not the thumb, and it's basically from the bottom of the finger where the meat palm of the hand ends up to the fingertip, but still letting the fingertip open, so he's not taping over the top. And it's really stiff. It's not this kind of bend flexible tape. Most players kind of tape, but you can still kind of get some bend in the fingers. He almost can't even bend his fingers at all. It's almost like a stiff, just a kind of a claw, not a claw, but like a paddle hand, literally like a ping pong paddle. So again, you can see the hand. And I think it's also sometimes, because you want to have an open hand when you hit, and you want to have an open contact. I think some players kind of close, when they're younger, they close their hand or they make a fist sometimes, and you don't want that. You don't want to contact with a fist. Obviously, we have no control of how we hit the ball with that. We want to hit it with an open hand and have those fingertips wrap around the ball so we can manipulate the angle of the ball and push it into different areas. Not just hit it, with a fist. That's just going to give us one forward, unpredictable motion. So we hit it with the palm of our meat of our hand, and then the fingertips wrap around and then move that ball around. So I think a lot of times, sometimes players put tape on their fingers to keep that hand open and relaxed, and then they'll make a fist also. So, but again, the legs are relaxed, the 90-degree kick through, and then relaxed again. So relaxed, stiff, accelerating, relaxed again. Here's a couple more players here. Here's Leon. Now, some players obviously wear tape because they hurt his finger. Like Leon here has got tape on his right pinky finger, and I think he's got it on his left pinky finger also. I think maybe it's for blocking, just to remind him to get his hands outside the ball, or his pinky's kind of gotten hit. But he doesn't usually wear tape that much. But again, here is the loading phase. Again, acceleration phase, right? So we had this nice 90 degrees, this nice 90-degree angle here. And then look at the legs here. And then perfect on contact, this perfect, nice forward flexion here. Again, when you contact it through, the legs are relaxed. And then now, after you relax, then you're kind of bracing for impact and come down. Here's Lanza, here's Felipe Lanza. Going up, he has this, you can just see this load is so different. It's such a high load. It's almost kind of like a middle load. But then he starts to pull it back. You get this nice kind of trophy pose, I like to call. And then this is relaxed too. So again, here's hand, again, we can see the tape. That's for ball hand contact, he does it always. But we're really looking, this is the max load phase. This is your perfect C. And then this is when we're starting to go out. So the arm has to be completely relaxed at this motion, at this point too. So we can really see how that arm capsule gets super loose, super stretched out. And then flips forward with the thumb up. So here again, 90 degrees, another 90, perfect. So that thumb, now that hand is almost basically high-fiving the ceiling. And that way, when the elbow does go forward, the fingertips are on top and the thumb's on the side. So again, then you see the lower legs. Watch the lower legs here. Off their contact, they're relaxed until they land, right? And the knees absorb the impact by being like a shock. They break a little bit in the shock absorber. And you can see the arm here again too, loose, right? So the follow through to the right. So let's talk about follow through for a second. We've talked about our 390s, the hand relaxed, getting behind the head. That's when we start to flick the arm forward. We start to accelerate. Everything's going forward because our arm joint capsule and the shoulder and all the muscles and the humerus head has rotated inside the labrum into a nice position where it can get back pretty far. So you can see obviously how far back volleyball hitters get to hit, but this is a process of not forcing and jerking that arm back, but letting it relax naturally so that we can really elasticate and then get all that momentum. So by this process, when we accelerate, we want to drive our hand through the ball. So we don't want to stop our hand. We're creating all this energy, and we want to accelerate through the ball. Good hitters and great hitters drive right through the ball. They don't stop their hand like a jump shot. They're driving their hand really fast through this ball, and their hand travels it's almost like kung fu or karate or mixed martial arts. Any kind of martial art discipline is you're striking through an object, right? You're not surface tapping something. You're contacting through an object. You're traveling. You want to, if you're punching an object, say you're hitting a brick or a wood piece, you want to pretend and mentally image in your mind that you're punching right through that object and not just making surface contact. That way the energy and your chi, which is basically chi, is your energy built up. So you can research this through the martial arts. Is that energy that we've been drilling, that kinetic chain, is kind of like your chi too. Your energy force is traveling through, and then the masters who chop bricks or can really do some damage through their punching motion. We're kind of doing this, but into the volleyball. So we're accelerating through the ball. So a lot of people talk about follow through, like, oh yeah, hit through and then put your hand in your pocket, in your left pocket. So we go from our right-handed, we go up and we put our hand in the left pocket. Or I hear that a lot, is put your hand in your pocket. And that's okay. That's okay for a beginner. And that's okay for people that really need a kind of a basic understanding of what to do and are, kind of on step one of designing this, or not designing, but explaining this. But you really follow through. Tom House explains a lot through follow through as a process, because your arm, we've accelerated the arm so well, and we've done all these different motions and these movements to whip our arm forward so fast that the follow through is a natural a deceleration process that our arm has to go through in order to slow itself down naturally and not hurt itself, because we're whipping our arm so fast. And all of this is to create arm speed. This whole motion is to hit the ball hard, right? So we want to jump high and we want to hit hard. So again, we're contacting it here, and you'll see a lot of young players. You'll see a lot of players, and they'll stop their arm about here. That literally just looks like they stop it. But we want to be able to really drive through that ball, almost like it's not even there. We really want to drive through that ball, and our arm comes through our body completely, and it's relaxed. After contact, it's relaxed again, and it deaccelerates where our back muscles, our trap, our lats, our rotator cuff muscles, all those teres minors, all those kind of different rotating cuff muscles are deaccelerating our humerus bone. So it's not just going to rip out of our arm socket, and that labrum won't just tear out and fly out, right? So that's the point. So if you have loose shoulders and you don't strength train a lot, that's how actually I tore out my shoulder a lot, is from excessive weightlifting forward, lots of training just on my forward and not really on my back, and then having natural looseness in my shoulders, very loose shoulders actually, naturally, compounded with overly weightlifting forward and not symmetry back, and not training my back. And my arm would come out of the socket a lot and then rip up, and then my labrum couldn't hold it anymore. And that's what my surgery was. So I had to tighten the arm capsule again, and the labrum, and then rehab. So after that, actually, I just basically only weightlifted and did a lot of training with my back muscles, and could hit the ball unbelievably harder just by training my back muscles, which sounds interesting, because the back muscles are bigger muscles. They support that kinetic chain on your load. You can see how your back is being energized and then flinging forward. And also the concept is that your body doesn't necessarily want to hurt itself. So your arm is only going to go forward as fast as it can catch itself. So let me repeat that again. Your arm is only going to go forward as fast as you want it to go, as fast as possible, if your arm can catch it, if the arm muscles in your back can catch it. So that means that your arm doesn't want to fly out of the socket all the time. Your arm wants to stay strong and stay solid naturally, so it can be repeatable motions, and that you can survive if you're, in the wild. Basically, you don't want to dislocate your shoulder. That's kind of evolutionary thing. And so we get this really important back muscles catch the decelerators, catch the arm going through. So when they say put your hand in your pocket, they're really talking about kind of the concept of following all the way through. Now, once you've kind of got that concept in your mind of following all the way through, you can kind of forget about putting your arm in your pocket, because as you can see, you want to be able to go left and right and center and exaggerate. You want to be able to direct your arm to the left on all these different spots, because that's where the ball is going to go. If you're only putting your hand into your left pocket, so righty to your left hand pocket, you're only going to be hitting basically cross body, because that arm is coming across the ball and hitting, and then you're following, you're directing it into that left side of the body. So it's not necessarily good. You want to have range of motion in all things. You're going to see through different hitters, they follow to the left, they follow to the middle, they follow to the right, outside their body, and so forth. So it's really an important thing to kind of practice all range of motions and strengthen all range of motion in your shoulder. We went over the shoulder capsule, the anatomy of it, and just how dynamic that range of motion is and all those little muscles there. So we really want to strengthen every single part: the front, the top, the back, the side, the insides, the lats, the armpit, the traps, the glutes, not the glutes, sorry, the humerus, all the ones that attach to the humerus and stuff like that. So it's really important that we strengthen and have range of motion and strength and flexibility in all aspects of the arm shoulder.